Jordan's POV. Can I use your phone? I asked Bash as soon as my grandfather and his posse left in their cars. Sure. Bash handed me his phone. I tried to call Nicky, but he didn't answer. He had better be talking to his family, telling them that he is going to go to my grandfather and telling him about his biological father. I was counting on Nicky to fix this mess. My grandfather was losing his marbles. He forced me to come stay with the hellhounds for my own safety and well-being, sure. Then, why did he have my cell phone turned off? Wouldn't I need that to call someone in an emergency situation? He wanted to separate me from Nicky. I am an adult. How dare he do this to me? Ugh, no answer, I said and handed his phone back to him. He is probably busy. I will let you know if he calls back, said Bash. Thanks, I said. You're welcome to stay here as long as you like, Jordan. I understand though you probably don't want to be here, said Bash. It's not that, Bash, I appreciate it, but my grandfather forced me to come here. He thinks that locking me in a box with you will force me to have feelings for you. You know what he wants. I told him. I know. Have you told him that isn't what you want? He asked. Yeah. Are you kidding? Of course. I have. Yesterday I told him that I was in love with Nicky, and in less than 24 hours, he sent me away from him. I was getting upset. Why doesn't your grandfather like him? Bash asked. He doesn't know that Emmett is Nicky's real father. He thinks Nicky is an omega and not good enough for me or the pack. I said. Oh, I see. That's all, Bash said. I'm going to go over to River's house and see what's up with him if you don't mind. I told Bash to break the long silence. Not at all, he said. I left Bash's pack house and I walked down to River's house. He didn't come to the door when I knocked, so I let myself in. A lot of wolves don't lock their doors. Nothing out of the ordinary. I hollered for him, but he wasn't home. After walking around downstairs, I plopped on his couch and turned on his TV. There was no use in fighting my grandfather when he ordered me to get in the car this morning. He had Colin's dad, Mitchell, who was our Delta, with him along with some guards. They were going to escort us to the hellhounds. He brought them in case we ran into trouble on our drive. I couldn't throw a tantrum in front of them. I had to cooperate when my grandfather told me to get in the car this morning. I was already pissed that my phone wouldn't work and that I didn't get to say anything to Nicky. I had to act mature in front of the other pack members, no matter how ridiculous my gramps was being. Hey, Jordan. Jordan. River was standing by the couch looking at me. Huh. Did I fall asleep? Sorry, I said as I snapped up. I think so. I didn't know you were going to be here. Bash called me after I got done working out. He said. Yeah, I said, rolling my eyes as I was about to tell him about the situation. I take it that your grandfather's plan to marry you off to Bash is working out great with you sleeping on my couch and all. He chuckled as he went to his fridge. You know what? Can I use your phone really quick? I asked. Yeah, where's yours? He came back over and gave me his phone. Alpha Cross has it, I said like a smartass. I called Nicky and he still did not answer. It was so frustrating. I figured by now he would be wondering where the hell I was. I left him a voice message telling him I was at the hellhounds and told him he could call me back on River's phone. I hung up and looked at River's home screen and saw the date. It's going to be a full moon tonight, I said to River, handing his phone back. Yeah, he said apprehensively. What's the matter? I asked. During full moons the urge to shift into a wolf was extra strong. At Fire Moon, some of the pack is hunting groups, some go on a trail run, guards use it to train, and others just run around for fun. It's a special night that breaks up the average routine. What do you guys do? I asked River even though he didn't answer my first question. We will stay inside tonight, he said. Why? I'm kind of curious to see what your pack does, I said. Not a good idea, Jordan, said River. Ugh, why? I pushed. We are different and most of the pack doesn't know you're here, better to play it safe and stay in. He was being vague. Fine, I huffed. I had no intention of staying inside. River evading my question just made me want to go out even more. I bided my time until it got dark outside. I started hearing a bunch of wolves as the moon rose. It seemed like a real party outside. Inside, River pulled the blinds shut and we were watching some random movie in the living room. I got up and went to the kitchen. I opened his refrigerator and quickly slipped off my clothes while I was shielded by the fridge door. Any other circumstance this would be classified as weird, but I did not want to shred my clothes when I shifted. River was still watching the movie, paying no attention to me. I was now naked and I shut the door to the refrigerator. Carefully, I tiptoed around the kitchen and made it to the hall. I leaned against the wall and let out my breath I had been holding in. Well, shit. That wasn't a good idea because River heard me. Jordan, he called. I ran to the front door, flung it open and dashed out. My heart was beating so fast because I knew River was going to be chasing after me. I had to hurry. I shifted and took off into the darkness. I knew to expect the burning smell, but it really stung my nose this time. It was like inhaling smoke, but I knew it was just hellhounds. I ran around in a zigzag formation, hoping that would keep River from catching up to me right away, knowing as soon as he did, I would have to go back inside. It was really dark except for the moon. All the houses had their lights turned off and the street lights were out. The further into some trees I began to see wolves, but something in particular caught me off guard. Everywhere I looked I saw wolves having sex, some in wolf form and other couples in human form. Each way I turned my head there were more. I kept on running trying to get out of this mess I was in. I was freaked out. My wolf ran towards a clearing, but I put in the brakes when we got to the edge. It was Bash. His wolf was getting it on with another wolf. I was in some weird alternate reality, and all I wanted was to go back to River's house and bolt the door until the sunrise. I turned to run back the way I came and my wolf knocked right into the hellhound I knew as River. Hi, I said in mind link. Let's go back inside, follow me. River linked. A howl came from behind me. I turned and looked out of instinct, but quickly wished I hadn't. This kind of thing was not my cup of tea. I wanted to stop watching and burn these images from my mind. Jordan, now. River linked. I followed River back to his house. His garage door was open and we went in there. He shifted and I did too. River hit the automatic door button and the garage door closed. He was staring at me. Sorry, I said, bolting out of the house buck naked. River looked at me sternly. What was Bash doing? I interrupted the beginning of River's lecture. Do I really need to spell it out for you? He said. No, I guess it just shocked me, I said, shaking my head. Things get a little crazy around here on a full moon. Female hellhounds go into heat almost every time and well, you know. He started going inside his house and I was following him. Not really, I said. You really are sheltered, aren't you? He laughed. River threw on some shorts. I gathered my clothes and took them into his hallway bathroom to get redressed. I was trying to think of anything I could other than what I saw outside. I shivered in repulsion. When I went back out, River was standing at the counter pouring himself a drink. Would you like one? He asked. Yes, please, I said, hoping it would help me forget all of the wolf sex happening out in the woods. That one was mine, River said when I grabbed the first glass as he poured the second. Ugh, I said and smacked my lips. This one is yours, he said as he poured Coke in with the whiskey. I grabbed the glass and chugged all of it. River watched me, and I caught his eye as he was staring. I sat the glass down and grabbed the bottle to pour another. It was a rough night, I said with a wink. Oh, so it's like that. He shot his drink quickly and sat his glass down next to mine. I poured us both another round of drinks. We stood around his bar top counter chatting and drinking. I needed this. I had been through a lot and under a ton of stress lately. It was nice to have a drink with a friend and let go for a second. River got some chips out and we were snacking when there was a knock at his front door. Be right back, he said and jogged to the door. Who could be knocking at his door at this hour? I guess everyone in their pack is still awake, but it was after midnight. I poked my head around the hall to see who it was. There was a girl standing outside. It was hard to see because most of his lights were turned off. River stepped outside and closed the door halfway behind him, making it really hard to see now. I crept down closer to them. I heard it before I saw it. They were kissing. I heard her making noises, and I saw River's arm around her waist. After a minute or two of that, River came back inside. Alone. Who was that? I asked with interesting look on my face. Spying on me, are you? He asked. Just curious, I said. Just a friend wondering why I wasn't out tonight, he said nonchalantly. A friend? I said sarcastically. She is just a friend. Why? Are you jealous? He was smug. I didn't come up with a response fast enough, and I blamed the alcohol for stepping in closer to River. I tried to stop myself, but before I could use better judgment, I leaned in closer to him and looked up at him. He swooped me up in his arms and carried me over to the bar top and sat me on top of it. I was sitting on the counter, he was standing in front of me, and I had a leg on either side of him. His lips just inches away from mine. I put my hands around his neck and ran my fingers through his hair a couple times without thinking. He pulled his face away from mine, and we both took a couple of breaths. My heart rate started to slow down a bit. He stood there for a second and then spoke. I'm going to take a shower, he said. Okay, I said as I caught a glimpse of the bulge in his shorts. After River went upstairs, I leapt off the counter and went over to lay on the couch. My head was spinning. I was mad at myself for what I had just about done. I loved Nicky. Damn alcohol. I know River was attractive, but he wasn't the man I was in love with. Breeze was pissed. Want some coffee? River asked from the kitchen. Sure, I said, and he brought me a cup. No calls? River said. What? I asked because I didn't know what he meant. I haven't received a call back from Nikki on my phone. He said. Oh. I instantly felt guilty about last night. Jordan, it's okay. River said. No, it's not. I love him. I said. It's called getting drunk and we stopped it before anything happened. Not a big deal. It's not like either of you have marked each other. He said. River had a point. Mates marked each other with a bite. The venom from the bite left a mark. It is how you claimed your mate, and it showed everyone that they were off limits. The same way wedding rings are a symbol of a union. Everyone still marks their mate today, but just because someone wasn't marked didn't mean they were free game. I loved Nikki and I was committed to him. As I continued to think about it, I wondered why Nikki hadn't called. If he had gone to my grandfather, then I surely would have gotten a call by now. Oh, I get that if we had done stuff, that it would be no big deal to you. I said. Are you referring to my pack? He asked. Yeah, I'm referring to you and the wolf orgies, happening out there by the dozens. I could see how a little kissing is nothing compared to all of that. I smirked. It's not as uncommon as you think. It goes on in a lot of packs. And he stared at me. Not at Fire Moon. I said. Yeah it does. My grandfather would not allow that. No way. Your grandfather has a mate. Why would he be going out and having random sex? He laughed. Exactly. I said. No, exactly. He wouldn't be going out. But trust me, the wolves, without mates in your pack, are out romping around when a bunch of she-wolves are in heat, especially on a full moon, said River. Trust me, I would know if that was happening. I said. No one is stupid enough to invite the alpha's granddaughter to a random full moon sex orgy, or however you put it. Gotta keep the little princess pure. Plus, they want experienced wolves at the freaks ho. He was annoying. Why are you being mean? I'm not, but you're judging something you know nothing about. Gain some perspective, he said, and we sat in silence for a few minutes. You're right, I'm sorry. I said to him. It's all right, I told you, you're jealous. He smiled. Oh, whatever, I said and threw a pillow at him. I spent another day with the hellhounds, and the following day, I was picked up by Lee Osborne, the bait of our pack, and some guards. They took me home to Fire Moon. I didn't even bother talking to them on the ride home. Thanks for summoning me back here, Your Highness. I sneered when I saw my grandfather. We missed you, Princess, he said. Sure, you did. I regret to inform you that I am not betrothed to Alpha Bashir. I kept the charade going. That was not the purpose of you going there. We have dealt with the attempted security breach, and have increased the number of guards and guards in training. Keeping you safe is my #1 priority, Geordie, he said. Huh, I would have thought it was your secondary priority, but by all means build an army. I look forward to joining them in training tomorrow, I said and took a bow. I am having a meeting later, and you need to be there, and Geordie, please lose the attitude before the meeting, he said and started to walk away. Can I have my phone back? I asked. After the meeting, he said back. I rolled my eyes and went up to my room to shower and change. My grandfather called me to come downstairs before I had a chance to dry my hair. I joined him alone in his office. It was large and had a conference area in it. Before anyone else gets here, I wanted to talk to you, my grandfather began. Okay, I said. I called this meeting today because I want you involved with the pack and the potential threat from Wild Wind. Maybe this will make you get serious about your duties to the pack as the next Luna, he said. You're beginning to sound like a broken record, I said, and in walked Lee and Luke. Good evening, Alpha. Luke, the kickass said. After Lee and Luke, in walked Kai. Ted and his son, Tito, who is Kai's cousin, entered the room and sat down. Mitchell came in with Colin. My grandfather took a seat at the head of the conference table. The gang was all here, Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta and their respective replacements plus Kai. I have never seen Tito join in these meetings, but he was the right age now. I just wanted to get this meeting over with so I could go find Nikki. Most of the meeting was boring. They talked about the improvements in security that had been made. Someone talked more about how many new members were recruited for training, and how well they were getting along with each group. There were no more threats coming from Wild Wind, but even so Lee wanted to start planning an attack. I agreed with him on that. Kill Eric Darrow, so he can't hurt anyone else. My grandfather said he would talk to him privately about that matter. Next, my grandfather asked if there were any other items to discuss. Luke raised his hand. Alpha Cross, when can the pack expect to have successor for yourself? Luke asked, looking my grandfather in the eye and avoiding my death glare. What a savage, I heard Kai say under his breath. For fuck's sake, Luke. I am right here. Ask me yourself. I snarked. Jordan. My grandfather hushed me. We were expecting to hear something now that you have returned from your visit with the Hellhounds and Alpha Jones. Luke was talking to me now. Were you? I cranked my head to my grandfather, who just earlier told me there was no ulterior motive in sending me away to Bash's pack. There is nothing to report on that matter, my grandfather said to the group. Sir, if I may, I would like to express my concern for Jordan. I don't think her pursuing a relationship with Nikolai Oat is conducive to procuring an alpha, Luke said. Oh shit, Kai whispered with a grin. This was shots fired. I was livid. I was gone a few days, and I come back to Luke being my nemesis. Before I could speak, Colin snapped back to Luke. Those are some pretty big words. Luke must have been rehearsing all day with Daddy, said Colin. It was time someone had my back, or at the very least called Luke out for being a total ass. Hey now. It's a genuine concern. He has a right to voice his opinion, said Lee as he stood up, holding Luke back from leaning across the table. Who I pursue a relationship with is none of your business, Luke, I yelled, and was standing next to Colin across the table from Luke. Actually, it is, so I would appreciate it if you didn't waste your time banging a lowlife, said the idiot. That's it. Colin shot across the table at him, and they were both on the ground, with Luke held in a chokehold. What did he expect? He insulted Nikki, Colin's cousin, right to his face. Wolves stick up for their family. No you don't, Kai said as he grabbed a hold of me when I went to join Colin in beating Luke's ass. Colin had a tight hold around Luke's neck. Luke was gasping by now, and Lee was trying to pry his son free. Finally, Mitchell went over and helped separate the two. Lee, get your son and teach him to have some respect, said Mitchell. The same to you, Lee said back. Throw shade on my family again, and see what happens, warned Colin to Luke. What is going on in here? My grandmother came in the office, hearing the commotion. The meeting is over. Everyone is dismissed, my grandfather said. Yes, Alpha. Some of us said back, and we exited the room. I went outside with Colin and Kai. Tito joined us too. Lee took Luke home right away. We were standing on the front steps of my house, talking about what had happened. It was nice of Colin to stand up for Nikki. I wondered if Nikki told him anything since I had left. Maybe Colin knew Nikki could possibly be the next alpha. That old Colin was sticking up for his kin. It was respectable, and I wasn't left feeling like the odd man out in the meeting. Jordan, time to come in, my grandfather said and shut the front door. Ugh, I gotta go in. I must still be on lockdown. See you guys tomorrow, I said. I went inside. This was ridiculous. I wanted to see Nikki. I was about to the end of my rope, wanting to give up and tell my grandfather the truth about Nikki, just so this could all be over. I decided I would tell Nikki he had until tomorrow to tell my grandfather. Well, I would do it. As I walked up the stairs to my bedroom, my grandfather stopped me. No sneaking out and no visitors, he ordered. I rolled my eyes and marched up the stairs. Constantly being a prisoner was not good for my anxiety. You'd think he would realize that and not keep me on house arrest. Asshole. I woke up in a better mood. I got up extra early so I could be out of the house and on my way to the training grounds before my grandfather could stop me. My heart was jumping the closer I got. I couldn't wait to see Nikki. I missed him so much. I started jogging to get there faster. He wasn't there when I arrived. Granted, it was earlier than normal. Heidi and some of the others were there along with two new faces. I walked over to them wanting to say hi to Heidi. Hey girl, Heidi said to me. Hey, I said. They drafted some new recruits since you've been gone. This guy is Reese and her name is Sufi, Heidi said, introducing two of the new trainees. Hi, I said to them. I recognized them from high school, but they were in the grade below me. There were quite a few training groups of all levels. Heidi said every training group was getting more people. I started to chat with her as we began stretching, but I was constantly checking around looking for Nikki. Whoa, sick scar, Jordan, Kai said, joining our stretching circle. Kai, snapped Heidi. It's fine, Heidi, I said, assuring her that I wasn't offended. It's kinda hot, said Colin, and he winked at me. I knew by now this was just Colin's demeanor. Plus, I liked the compliment. My scar was ugly, but it came with quite the story. It was a sign of strength and courage. Everyone had obviously seen the video, so that is why they were all staring at my scar on my shoulder. For how much it hurt, it better have earned me some pack cred. I was distracted talking with my friends, so I didn't notice when Nikki arrived over at the benches with his bag. I heard high-pitched squealing coming from a girl, and I turned to look over at where the noise was coming from. I saw some girl with Nikki, and he was snapping a towel at her. I watched as she grabbed her water bottle and went to spray him with it. Nikki grabbed the girl's wrist and was holding it to keep her from getting him wet. Nikki, stop, the girl said in a playful tone. I'm sure the anger was written all over my face as I continued to watch. Did this bitch just call him Nikki, as in my Nikki? What the fuck? What the fuck? I said to myself as I still had my head turned in that direction. That's the other new girl, Brenna, said Heidi. Nikki took the water bottle away from Brenna and turned his back to her and held it up over his head so she couldn't reach it. It looked like she reached down and pinched Nikki's butt because he jumped away from her. Why was he flirting with this bitch? Did you just goose me? he shouted at her, smiling. "Oh yeah. Come on, Nikki. Give me my water," she said. Rage. So much rage and jealousy washed over me. I looked back at Heidi for a second, and then started walking over to this ludicrous scene happening at the benches. I heard Heidi and Kai walking behind me. "She's gonna get her," Kai said, snickering. This chick was jumping and reaching around Nikki even when I got up close to them. I know Nikki saw me walking over here. I went straight in and took one hand around the girl's bicep and shoved her back off of Nikki. She looked at me in bewilderment. "Touch him again, and I will break your arm, bitch," I barked. I turned to look at Nikki because I needed to have a conversation with him, but I was rudely interrupted by the girl behind me. I figured she was going to have a problem understanding simple instructions. Most whores do. "Excuse me," she said. I said, "Back off. He is mine," turning back and facing her. "I didn't see a mark anywhere." She chimed back, "Is this bitch for real?" She was pissing me off now for a number of reasons. She was all over my man, she interrupted me, and she made me broadcast that he was mine in front of Luke, the known spy. I was going to try to keep a low profile in front of Luke, so he didn't go running back to his dad and tattle again. That was blown thanks to her. "If he is yours, then I suggest you mark him to avoid any more confusion," she said and walked away. Where was the confusion? I was left wondering why Nikki never told her that he was taken. Actually, I had a lot of questions for him. Had he been lollygagging with this hoe the whole time I was gone? He was supposed to be having a deep and meaningful with my grandfather. My anger was not subsiding. I was still mad. I huffed and then took off jogging. I left the training grounds and ran back to the pack house, voluntarily committing myself this time. Nikki's POV. She marked me. It was invigorating. Right as she bit into my lower neck, I came so hard inside her. I couldn't control myself. I knew she was my mate. I knew with the first night I came back to Fire Moon. I love her. I told her that she should get back, because I didn't want her to catch any more grief from Alpha Cross. If he caught her sneaking out, he would send her away again. As she was getting her clothes on, I looked at her. Oh my God. Her body had bruises and scrapes all over. I saw a bruise on her face by her cheek and more scratches. I felt terrible for hurting her. I shouldn't have been that rough. "We can talk tomorrow. I will come over after training and talk to you and the Alpha," I told her. I would have told her we could go to her grandfather right now and get this conversation over with if it weren't for how she looked right now. In the morning her face would be healed. If the Alpha saw her tonight, he would flip his shit. He would want to rip my head off, and I can't blame him. I felt so guilty when I looked at her and her scratches. I walked her to the edge of her driveway and said goodnight. I turned and jogged home. When I got to my house, my dad and my uncle, Mitchell, were waiting for me. My dad had a concerned look on his face. This wasn't good. "Are you okay, son? Where were you at this evening?" my dad asked. "I'm fine, Dad. I was with Jordan," I said, trying to gauge what I wanted to say in front of my uncle, the Delta. "Alpha Cross wants to see you now," Mitchell said. "Okay, let me go in and grab a shirt," I said, walking past him, and my dad followed me. "Nikolai, Mitch is saying you're in trouble. What happened?" my dad asked as we were both standing in my room. "Oh," he said. My dad saw the still bleeding mark on my neck. He looked at it and then it all clicked in his head. A grin spread on his face. "Oh son, let's go set this straight." He patted me on the back, and we went downstairs and outside. Mitchell was out there and Lee had arrived in the meantime. They both gave me a stern look. They escorted me to the pack house. My dad came with us, thankfully. Jordan was sitting in a chair in the living room, next to her grandmother when we got there. Her face was red and she had been crying. When I saw that I got angry, I quickly went over to her. She stood up and I held her for a second until her grandfather ordered me to let her go. "No!" Jordan yelled. "Nick, come on. It's okay." My dad pulled me back. "I want to know why my granddaughter came home looking like she had the shit beat out of her. I told you to stay away from her." Her grandfather yelled. "He didn't beat me. I already told you. I am fine." Jordan yelled back at him. "Hush, Jordan." "Ada." Her grandfather snapped. "Shh, Jordan. Calm down." Jordan's grandmother tried to quiet her down. "Alpha, I think this is a misunderstanding. Nick would never hurt Jordan," my dad said, but was interrupted by Jordan's grandfather. "Look at her. Look at her face, Alan. He has been sneaking around, even after I gave him a direct command to stay away from her, and now this. I won't tolerate it. It leaves me no other choice but to banish him from the pack," he said. Jordan's POV. "As soon as I heard my grandfather say he was kicking Nikki out of the pack, I lost it. I saw red. No way was I going to let that happen. I got in the middle of my grandfather and Nikki. No. He is my mate. I love him." I roared. "Ada." My grandfather shot a glare at her so she would get a hold of me, of course. "Nikki. Tell him." I looked at Nikki as my grandmother pulled on my arm to get me to move. "Jordan. He's right, I hurt you," said Nikki. "What? No, you didn't," I said to him, shaking free of my grandmother's hold. "Jordan, enough," my grandfather boomed. "No. We Nikki and I had sex in the woods earlier tonight. I was the one being rough, not him," I said. Not something I dreamed I would ever tell another soul, let alone my grandparents and the rest of the people in my living room. Nikki was beginning to roll over and take his punishment. I don't care if he regretted slamming up against a tree, because I didn't. I needed him to help defend himself. It was now or never. "My word, Jordan," my grandmother gasped. "It's true, I hit him, and I bit his lip. I wanted him to be rough with me," I went on. There was a little voice in my head that was telling me to stop, that this was too much information. I was past the point of embarrassment. "Jordan," I heard Nikki whisper. It was him. He was trying to tell me to stop talking. I heard him link me. "Is this true?" My grandfather looked at Nikki. "Yes, Alpha," Nikki said. "See? I wasn't lying, I am fine," I said. "Everyone agrees then. You defied me and continued a relationship with Jordan anyway despite my direct order. On top of that, you caused harm to her physically," my grandfather said. "No. I was cut off. Lee, you and Ada take Jordan up to her room." "Jordan, I am done with your insolence," my grandfather shouted as I was being pulled away. "Get your hands off of me." I flipped around as Lee was trying to carry me to my room. I couldn't hear what else was said. I was thrown on my bed by Lee, and my grandmother sat with me for a few minutes as I cried into my pillow in anger. Lee stood at my door, so I couldn't leave. I cried so hard I was sobbing. I couldn't catch my breath. Being locked away and having Lee guarding the door gave me flashbacks of Wild Wind and being Eric Darrow's hostage. I began to gasp for air. I was having a panic attack. Jordan, calm down. Everything is gonna be okay. My grandmother tried to comfort me. I stood up and walked over to the window to open it. I need fresh air. The window wouldn't open. I fidgeted with the lock and I realized someone had screwed it shut. I continued to gasp for air, and I held on to the window pane to steady myself. Sit back down, Lee ordered. No. I gasp. Need, gasp, air. I said sit back down. Lee shouted. Hey, watch it. My grandmother snapped at Lee for talking to me so rudely. My grandmother stood up to Lee to remind him that he was not the higher-ranking member in this room. I was wheezing when I saw Nicky and his father walk out of the pack house down below my window. I couldn't let him leave. I smashed the window with my fist and glass fell. The noise caused my grandmother and Lee to rush over to me. I crawled out through the shattered glass and screamed for Nicky. He ran over in under me as I dangled from the roof gutter. I felt his hands on my ankles, and I dropped down to him. Jordan, you're bleeding, he said. I don't care, I'm going with you. I said. No, Jordan. Nicky said. What? I looked at him. He doesn't care if Emmett is my biological father. Jordan, being from an alpha bloodline, won't change his mind, he said. He wouldn't allow anyone with ties to Wild Wind to have anything to do with Fire Moon. It's over, baby. He crushed me with his words. So, you told him and it didn't even matter, it changed nothing. Everything I said in there I said for nothing. I cried. Nicky, we need to go home and get your things. Nicky's dad said to him. I marked you for nothing. I said. Not for nothing. I love you. I won't stop loving you, we just need to give it some time right now, said Nicky. We stared at each other for a moment. I hate him, I said. Me too, he said. My grandfather and Lee appeared at the doorway. They both looked angry. Jordan, of all the things you've done tonight, come on. We are taking you to the hospital. My grandfather snatched my good wrist and put me in the car. Nicky, I love you, I yelled as my grandfather slammed the car door shut. Once in the car, I looked at my hand and it was fine. It had already started healing. Before my grandfather got in, I heard him tell Lee to make sure Nicky was escorted off the territory in 1 hour. I wondered where he would go. I didn't have time to go to the hospital. I needed to come up with a way to stop Nicky from leaving or find a way to join him. I slid over to the other side of the back seat and opened the door. My grandfather was still talking to Lee when he saw me. I headed towards the pack house. The Alpha said you are going to the hospital, barked Lee as he tried to pull me back to the car. I slipped out of his hold and turned on him. I hated him almost as much as I hated his son. As your future Luna, if you lay another finger on me, you will regret it. I spat and went inside the house. I went up to my room and into my bathroom to wash the blood off of my hand and bandage the cut for now. I shook as much glass as I could out of my hair and changed clothes. About that time, I heard a light tap on my bedroom door. I opened it and was surprised at who I found. Colin. I looked at him. Shh, be quiet. Come on, let's go, now, he whispered urgently. I was confused, but he said, now, so I followed right behind him. We snuck out the back patio, and I continued to follow him until we got to the edge of a forest. When we were hidden by the tree line, he stopped and turned around. Nick is going to meet with the hellhounds, and then they are going to attack Eric at Wild Wind, said Colin. What? No, he can't, it's too dangerous. I said. That's why we are going to go help him. You and me. No, all of us, Colin said and pointed into the woods. I saw some of my friends and they waved. I could easily see Heidi, Kai, Roy, and Tito. There were about 10 other people with them. They were some more trainees from a different group. They looked a little older than me. I also saw Zeta Davis. We need to hurry and catch up with Nick so that we can help him and find out his plan, said Colin as we walked over to our friends. I will get you guys out across our west border, then it's a straight shot to where Nick is meeting Alpha Jones, Zeta Davis told all of us. I was stunned that all of these people were risking themselves to help me. Why would they bother? I was grateful for their help. Thank you. Thank you everyone for your help, I said to them. We are doing this for the future of Fire Moon, for our future Luna and Alpha, said Colin and smiled at me. Wow. I really had to thank Colin. He obviously was the one orchestrating all of this. He knew how backwards my grandfather had gotten. It felt nice knowing other people saw it too. Okay, we better shift now. Follow Zeta Davis until we reach the border, and then I will lead the way, spoke Colin. Most of us took off our clothes and left them on the ground once we shifted. We followed Colin's orders, and we were out of Fire Moon territory in no time. I kept an open mind trying to listen for Nikki or Bash up ahead. I heard people talking up ahead. Colin slowed down, but I pushed past him and continued running. I knew it was Nikki's voice. When I got to him, he was talking to Bash and River. They were in their human form. Jordan, what are you doing here? Nikki spun around and asked. Before I could respond, he pulled his shirt off from his back, and I shifted as he stood in front of me. I slipped on his shirt. I couldn't help myself. I reached up and wrapped my arms around him. I know it hadn't been that long since we saw each other. Colin came into view and shifted back. He stood there and began talking. We came to help. There are 16 of us, Colin said. No, I can't let you guys endanger yourselves, said Nikki to Colin and the rest of the wolves that approached. Oh, but you're fine letting us risk our lives, smirked River. River, you know we want Eric dead, just as much as Nick does. But Nick is right. It's his call on this one. If he wants you guys to return back to Fire Moon and stand down, then that is what you should do, said Bash. Cousin, as your future Delta, I will never disobey your orders, but you are not officially our Alpha just yet. We are going to help you, so the quicker you realize that, the quicker we can all get to work, said Colin. Fine, I guess we can use the help. Come close and listen up, said Nikki as he began to go over the plan. Once he was finished and everyone was informed of the plan, we all took a step back. Nikki pulled me to the side. I bet there's no way I can talk you into sitting out of this one, is there? He asked me. No, I want to go with you, I told him. Just be careful, he said. I will. I love you, he whispered in my ear. He pulled back and was getting ready. There was a lot riding on this. Nikki and his future depending on not only surviving this blitz attack, but killing Eric. It had to have been well past midnight, which was perfect for our surprise attack. River and now Tito would cause a distraction at the opposite side of Wild Wind, so the rest of us could sneak in close to their pack house. "What is the signal?" I asked as we were all huddled together waiting for River and Tito's distraction. Just then we heard a Wild Wind guard run by us about 50 feet away. Nicky motioned for us to follow him. Since I had only been to Wild Wind the one time, I was not sure of my way around the place, but I knew I'd recognize the pack house. River and Tito had to cause a big enough distraction so that the other guards would leave their posts to go assist the others, but it couldn't be a big enough issue to have the guards wake up their alpha. Hopefully it went as planned. Crouching, Nicky told us to hold up as we got close to the pack house. I could see it. None of the lights were on upstairs. That was a good sign, I thought. Now, it was time for Nicky to sneak inside. Without a second thought, he took off around the back of the pack house. The rest of our group just waited. My heart was beating so loud I was sure others could hear it. It felt like Nicky had been gone for hours. I kept searching every inch of the house with my eyes, waiting to see him. We smelled the smoke before we saw the fire Nicky had started in the house. If I could smell the smoke from where I was, then the house had to be filled with smoke inside. "Get ready," said Bash to the group. Bash, Colin, Roy and Kai shifted into their wolf forms and charged to the house as soon as the front door opened and people started coming outside. Smoke was trying to escape through the door at the same time, and they had their hands covering their faces, so it was hard to tell who was who. Bash didn't seem to care, because he immediately tore into the unsuspecting people. After tearing through the 4 figures that exited the house, Bash's wolf stood back waiting for more to come out. From that, I figured Eric and Emmett were still inside, along with Nicky. "Goddess, please let him make it out." By now, smoking was rising from the house, and you could feel the heat radiating off from it. As expected, we started to draw attention, and it was time for my group to watch Bash's group's backs. We fanned out and were ready to take out anyone who tried to attack. I will say that most people kept back and just watched their pack house slowly erupt in flames and burn, doing nothing to help their alpha or other leaders. It really showed how awful Eric Darrow was to his pack. A group of guards showed up. Some shifted, but they all stood their ground staring at us. We waited for them to strike first. No doubt, if the whole guard of Wild Wind showed up, then we would be insanely outnumbered. It was hard for me to keep looking behind me at the pack house and searching for Nicky when I had to focus on the threat in front of me. I heard yelling, or maybe it was screaming, as a group of people ran out of the pack house's front door. I heard Bash and Colin immediately attack them. That triggered the guards in front of us. The fight was on. They lunged at us, trying to break past us to save the people being attacked behind me. I was pretty sure Eric had made it out of the house. I could hear screams from a few women as well. "Eva, you coward!" I heard Bash yell while we were fighting. I turned to look and saw Eva running away from the fight. She stumbled a bit, was getting away. I wanted to go after her, but I was still waiting to see Nicky. If he didn't get out here soon, I would have to go into the house and drag him out. "Heidi, Morris, go after her," I ordered them. They broke free from the guards that they were against and took off after Eva, shifting into their wolf forms. We could not let her get away. She was just as guilty as her siblings. She had to pay for what she'd done. even if most of it was just being present for the atrocities that her brothers committed. The two guards that Heidi and Morris were fighting got past us, and they both teamed up on Roy. I shifted into my wolf and went after them. I pulled one easily off of Roy's back. He was still fighting in his human form, like Bash, Colin and Kai. I was getting ready to lunge at the other guard on top of Roy, when I felt a set of teeth sink into my flank. That wolf whipped me around, catching me off guard. Breeze and I landed with a hard thud on the ground. The wolf was on top of us in an instant, and I knew it had to be Eric, or Emmett judging from its size. I tried my best to kick the wolf off of me with my hind legs, but it didn't work. The wolf latched onto my throat, and I felt his jaw begin to clamp down tighter by the second. Breeze was trying everything she could to get free. I was running out of air. I began to see black dots. And then it was completely dark. Hang on. Stay with me. I could hear Breeze in my mind. I thought I had lost consciousness, but I wasn't sure if it was just a few seconds or not. I tried to focus on breathing. I could still hear fighting going on around me. I had to get up and help them. I had to get up and find Nicky. What if he was trapped in the house? The house? I could feel the heat even more now. The house was surely engulfed. I tried to force myself to move, but I was too weak. In the middle of this battlefield, I laid. Breeze trying to heal us as fast as she could, but we were already exhausted from fighting before we shifted. It had taken its toll. I could hear the fighting. I could smell the blood, in my blood. I felt the wind as people whooshed past me, paying no attention to the one of probably many bodies laying still. Jordan! Jordan! I heard Nicky's voice. She's okay, she's alive. I heard Bash yell out. Was that really Nicky's voice? He made it out of the house. I could hear both of their voices and they were close to me. Hearing Nicky made Breeze stir a bit. She opened her eyes. No, Kai. Stop. It had to be Nick. I heard Colin yell and my eyes searched for Kai. Kai had Eric Darrow in a choke hold on his knees. Bash came into sight. He was covered in blood and his clothes were torn, but he was dragging a wolf with him. So that had to be Emmett, and it was him that tried to kill me. Emmett shifted back into his human form, looking like he had the hell beat out of him. At that time, Heidi came into view with Morris, and they have Eva with them. She was screaming and cursing at them. Morris threw her down next to her brothers and stood behind her to keep a hold on her. Colin was holding on to Emmett, and Kai had a hold on Eric. The fighting had come to a stop. It was over now, right? Wild Wind. Today, you will get a new alpha. Yelled Bash out to the crowd of onlookers who had just witnessed this battle. The day of reckoning has come for you, Daros. Bash again spoke, but just to the siblings, and he did it with an evil smirk. Nicky approached Emmett. He only had a pair of shorts on. Emmett looked up at Nicky with anger. Going to kill your own father. Go ahead and show them who you really are, do it. Emmett spat at Nicky's feet. Bash walked up to tell Nicky something, but before he got to approach him, Nicky had shifted into his large wolf and ripped his father's head from his body with a growl. Emmett was dead. Eva screamed as Bash approached her. Bash held her, while I saw Nicky nod to Colin. Colin quickly transformed into his wolf, and like Nicky, swiftly tore off Eva's head. 2 of the Darrow siblings were dead in seconds. 1 still remained. Nicky's wolf walked over to Eric. He had a smile on his face. My Look how far you've come in the last year. It takes a real Darrow to kill his father. Looks like my pack will be left in good hands after all." His demented words didn't stop Nicky from attacking his neck. He ripped through Eric's windpipe and eventually severed his head, just like the others. Nicky's wolf raised his head to the sky and let out a loud howl. I watched as the rest of Wild Wind shifted into wolves. They began howling with him. "Nick, go, I got her," Bash yelled at his wolf. Nicky's wolf took off running. His pack followed. Nicky's POV. "Nick, go, I got her," Bash said to me. I had to go take a run with the pack members of Wild Wind to solidify myself as their new alpha. I knew most of them, having joined their pack last year, which meant they knew me. I felt the surge of the mind link as I connected to all of them again, but this time as their alpha. They were surprisingly quiet. No one was talking through it as we ran, but I could feel their emotions. They were mixed with congratulations and condolences. It was a mutual understanding between me and them. They knew what this cost me, but they knew it had to be done. Eric could not go on doing the things he did or treating people like he did. Emmett had to pay as well. As for the things he had done to Jordan, he got off easy. I ran my pack through our territory and stopped at the small lake. My pack. That sounds strange. I wanted to get back to Jordan, but I wanted to wash the blood from my wolf's mouth and face at least. I know Jordan was hurt, but I was more worried about what she watched me do. Seeing me kill my own father wasn't something I wanted her to see. I hoped she would be okay. I did not want her to be scared of me, and I didn't want her to be worried that I would spiral into some kind of manic state after slaughtering Eric and Emmett. As far as I was concerned, they weren't my family, and I wasn't going to become anything like them. Not like Eric or Emmett. I took a swim around and finished my wolf. Phoenix finished rinsing off. Not having any clothes with me at the lake, I headed back to the area that was still burning, where I left Jordan. Returning back in front of what used to be the pack house, I saw Morris holding Jordan, naked, and Heidi was standing in front of them defensively, blocking both River and Russell from getting to Jordan. I shifted back into my human form and got right in the middle. "What the fuck is going on?" I asked using my alpha tone. It came out even bolder and with more authority than it ever had before. "Russell is trying to take Jordan to the pack hospital, but River said we can't trust him. Since he was one of your Eric's guards, I don't know what to do, Nick." Heidi seemed flustered. After all, her and Morris had just chased down Eva by themselves, and now they were dealing with these two assholes. I eyed Russell. I knew him. He was one of the best fighters in Wild Wind, which is why Eric traveled with him kind of like a bodyguard. I wasn't sure if he could be trusted, even though he hadn't done anything bad that I knew of. He was never involved in the things Eric and Emmett did. That usually only included the siblings and his Beta, Delta, and Gamma. Which reminded me that I would need to track them down, if they hadn't already taken off from the pack. "Russell, find a couple of guards, and make sure this fire stays controlled," I ordered. He gave me a look of indifference that I did not appreciate. "Unless you plan on leaving the pack immediately, then you will stay here and babysit this fire until I can determine if you can be trusted," I snapped. "Yes, Alpha." He grumbled and backed away from me. I turned towards River. He was really starting to piss me off. In my eyes, he was a potential threat. He had feelings for Jordan, and I don't know about everyone else, but it was obvious to me. Phoenix became agitated in the back of my mind. I also did not like the fact that he had been staring at Jordan's naked body this whole time. She needs to be checked out by a doctor. My pack is the closest. We can take Jordan back there, River said and tried reaching around Heidi again. A growl left my lips before I had the chance to contain it. Touch her again, and you'll be the one who needs a doctor, I growled. I'm only trying to help her, Nick, River said back to me. I'm perfectly capable of helping her, River, now step back, I said, and I went to take Jordan from Morris' arms. I heard the puff of air, a small snort, maybe a huff, come from River. He really was doubting my ability to take care of my mate. That was the last straw for Phoenix. And honestly, it was the last thread of patience I had for River. I left Jordan in the grip of Morris, still, and spun around, connecting my fist with River's jaw. Was it a sucker punch? Yeah, but the twat had it coming. I was on top of River's back, as I had him on the ground in a choke hold, in a matter of seconds, since I caught him off guard. My knees were holding his arms down, and I had an arm around his neck. We both knew how easy it would be for me to snap his neck. Maybe I need to spell it out for you, hound. Jordan is mine, I growled. I lifted myself off of him and released my hold on his neck. Morris, Heidi, and Russell were quiet and their eyes were cast down to the ground. River stayed on the ground for a few minutes. I was starting to realize the authority my alpha tone commanded. It was strong, especially since it made a hellhound submit. I am taking her to the pack hospital. Morris and Heidi, come with us, I said as I took Jordan in my arms. It was not that far of a walk. I was familiar with the hospital and the doctor and nurses there. It is a small hospital, more like a clinic. It has 2 stories, but still it was quite nice compared to what other packs had. Some packs didn't even have a hospital on their territory, and had to go to a human hospital. I got Jordan checked in and the doctor was examining her. Alpha, can I speak with you? The doctor asked as he came out of the room. Alfie, I guess that's me. I nodded and walked over to him. Jordan is sleeping. My diagnosis is that her body and Wolf is extremely exhausted from all of the stress she has been under. I have her on a sedative to help her sleep. After a day or 2, she should be able to go home, but she will need to take it easy. The doctor spoke. I looked at him. No stress. That is easier said than done. We were still in the middle of an uphill battle. Next thing to tackle would be making some sort of peace with her grandfather. I thought about where I would even start with that. Morris, Heidi, stay here and keep a watch on Jordan, please, I said, adding the please to soften the order I just gave them. I wasn't their alpha yet, but I knew they wouldn't question me. They were Jordan's friends and cared for her well-being. Leaving the hospital was hard. I wanted nothing more than to stay with Jordan, but I needed to take care of some things and time was of the essence. I searched around looking for my cousin, Colin. Finally finding him, he was with Kai, Roy, and Bash. Nick, how's Jordan? Colin asked. Stable and sleeping it off, I replied. I noticed River was nowhere to be found. Maybe he took the hint and left. The guys looked tired, but luckily no one was severely injured. Colin, I need you to do something for me. Alpha Cross needs to be made aware of the situation. I am not letting Jordan return to Fire Moon until her grandfather comes to terms with the way things are unfolding. I want you to tell him and the other rank members what is going on here. Let them know Jordan is okay too. I told him. Alpha Cross is not going to be happy, especially with me. I was the one who snuck her out. Colin stated. I know he will be pissed, but I need to know where his mind is at. I need to figure out if he is finally going to let go of his idea of marrying Jordan off, or whatever else the old man was thinking. I need you to keep me informed. I stared at him. This was an important task. I knew I was asking a lot. I will head back to Fire Moon. Now Morris and Heidi requested to stay back. Do you want anyone else to stay here? He asked. Morris and Heidi are fine to stay. Everyone else can go home. And Colin, thank you for your help, I said. He patted my back and turned to head out. I had no idea how long Jordan would need to stay in the hospital, so I needed to figure out a place for us to stay, since I burned down the pack house. Thinking about my choices, I remembered the guest houses. I would need to find Harrison, one of the lead housekeepers that took care of the pack house, and see if he would be willing to help me. Harrison was more than happy to help me. I was thankful. He was willing to resume his same position, like nothing had changed. He was also a huge help in pointing me to the right people to get things set up. He told me that an Omega named Jan could be trusted to go out and buy clothing and other necessities for Jordan and myself, so that when we got to the guest house, it would be stocked with the basics. Harrison also contacted Wild Wind's lawyer. He had already been made aware of the shift in leadership and was able to meet with me right away. The lawyer was going to work on transferring everything into my name. It worked out. Eric had Emmett listed as his beneficiary for everything, but Emmett had me listed as his beneficiary. Everything would be transferred seamlessly, granting me access to the mass of wealth my uncle had been saving while plotting his world domination, so to speak. I knew he had money. I just wasn't sure how much. The lawyer gave me 2 credit cards after we met. I was able to give one to Jan to buy the things we would need. After all of that, I felt better knowing I had some help in getting things set up for Jordan and I. It was nearing dark, so I headed back to the hospital. When I arrived, Jordan was still asleep. I sat in the chair next to her bed and passed out.